Thorn, thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
You're welcome, David. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thorn, I came to this country in 1960 as a political refugee from Cuba. My parents brought my sister and me here because they did not want to raise their children in a communist country. And very much of my identity as a youth was centered around our refugee status. And I learned what it meant to be a refugee. Then many years later, as the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, I traveled to Nairobi and took a short flight from that major city to a refugee camp of Dadaab on the Kenyan-Somali border. And I saw the Somali refugees resident in the camp for many, many years, 300,000 of them. And that experience, their experience, was far, far different than mine. I had not suffered like that in my journey here. And it really shook my identity as a refugee. How would you describe the identity of a refugee given your experience? And I'll ask you about your experience in a moment.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Deputy, for the opportunity. First and foremost, before I even say anything, I want to thank the American people. 16, 17 years ago, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what my life could have been. But given the opportunity and the door and welcome that was extended to me in darkness, I was able to see the light today. So, well, when we talk of refugees, it's a very broad term. And a lot of people, the term is refugee, but people, just like you said, there are political, refugees, there are, crisis refugees, war refugees, even natural disaster refugees. So, but what the similarity is the needs around when they left everything that they have, when everything that they have fall apart, and then they have to find where to begin. So most refugees here in common, they always look for green pastures, opportunities. But I think one thing that they share in common is safety and the security of their loved one, and be able to be together.
Thorn, you mentioned darkness that existed in your past, and of course the light to which you arrived here in the United States. Share with us, if you wouldn't mind, what the darkness really was.
Well, growing up as a child, I was the victim of political instability, greed, and also religious differences. So I was robbed from my childhood as a result of civil war that was happening in my country, Sudan at the time. So I fled home, which I lost my father. Most of my family members were killed as a result of war. So when I fled home, I didn't know where I was going.
How old were you there?
I was probably about 5 or 6. So I left, and then when I ended up in Ethiopia, I stayed there for 4 years in a refugee camp, then came back to Sudan, and then ended up in Kakuma from 1992 until 2000. So in the camp, most of the life was surrounding about we were living for the moment because we didn't have anything. We were in the camp for the longest, and we didn't know what the future was because everything, situation was not improving in my homeland country. Situation was not improving in the camp. So it was that kind of hope that we were hoping for something to happen. But years go by, and there was nothing. So we kind of felt hopeless. However, out of all that hopelessness, we were also inspired by resilience that, there are people out there, they will continue to do what they can to extend to us the generosity. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the beneficiaries that was given that generosity to come to the United States. So in 2000, I had the opportunity to be resettled in the U.S. as a minor. And because of that, that was the beginning of the light for me. And when I look back and where I was, I kind of felt like I was in a pit, with no light. but because of the humanity, the humanistic aspect of what we share, someone looked out for me, and I was given the opportunity to start a new life, and that's how I ended up in the U.S. Came with nothing, plastic bag and a textbook in my bag. The American community received me, opened their resources to me, and they were able to do everything they can to redefine me and for me to be able to transform my life.
When you first left Sudan as a young boy, 4 or 5 years of age, and traveled to Ethiopia, did you travel in a group with others?
We did in a group. It was a group of boys and girls. At the time, they used to call us unaccompanied minors. So we traveled, mostly we used to travel at night for a couple of reasons. One was because of the bombardment. We were bombed a lot by the government. Number two was to avoid the sun. And also the sun was very hot, and sometimes it caused there was lack of water. So for the most part, we travel at night, so that when we have no water, we'll be able to kind of like go to the next level. So we were traveling in group, but I think the biggest part was that I experienced was the safety along the road. A lot of wild animals were preying on kids and people that were traveling. So a lot of people became victims of wild animal. A lot of people drowned when we crossed rivers. So there were a lot of rampant death. So for some of us who were traveling at the time, it was that moment whereby you feel like sometimes life is not even worth it, But because of God, some of us made it to Ethiopia.
When you ended up in the camp Kakuma, which is in Kenya,
yes.
How long did you live in the camp?
From 1992 until 2000.
And for those 8 years, is that a camp with running water?
It was water, but sometimes it was water that is being shared by a large group of people. So sometimes there was a little bit of inadequate water, inadequate of food. So very much you can describe Kakuma or most refugees in Kenya having inadequate of almost everything, from medicine, from food, from security. So there were a lot of things that were against the refugees. However, that was much better condition than what they left from their host countries, because they were Somalian, they were Sudanese, they were Ethiopian, they were Eritrean, they were Somalis. So it was a very mixed camp. People came to the camp with different reasons. Some came as seeking political asylum. Some came because of war in their own countries. Some fled based on individual, religious and those kind of related problems. So it was the camp that was mixed with a lot of people, and then because of the scarcity of resources, so there were a lot of competition on limited resources, and that also caused tension among the refugees themselves.
How many people were in the camp throughout your 8 years at a particular time? From
what I was told, they say roughly about 80,000 refugees were in the camp, but I was in a minor group, so roughly about 300 to 400 boys, because we were jammed up together, and they were my brothers and I was their brothers, so we kind of look up to each other. And that's how we grow up.
Do you keep in touch with anyone whom you met in the camp?
Yes, I did. And I think that kind of falls to what I said earlier, that living in the camp is more of a darkness. There were people that went with me in 1992. They still in that camp. Some of them became parents. Some of them were born in 1992. They become adults. They even have their own families. They had their own children in the camp. So for some of them, they kind of felt that the world has closed out for them. And
the camp is their world.
The camp is all they know, and the camp is all they know, that there's no other opportunity that will happen to them, because that's all they know, and that's only what is available for them.
Do you remember what you felt when you first learned that you were going to be resettled in the United States?
I was in disbelief. I didn't know what was going. I couldn't believe it, because I thought it was just another something to just kind of highlight in my day. But I did not believe it until when I did the medical check, because my life has been really, a wreck of, incidents here and there. So when that opportunity presented itself, I kind of felt that, this is not true. It was that news that you can't believe. So for me, we were having about almost 15,000 boys and girls. So out of that population, there was nothing that I kind of felt would be unique about me, that I would have the opportunity. And that's one thing that I thank God, that out of that 15,000, I was among, the few that was given the opportunity to come to the U.S. So I was very thrilled. I thank God, and also I thank those people who were around me to continue to encourage me emotionally, because there was a lot of PTSD in the camp, a lot of traumatic stress disorder, and a lot of lack of in everything, diseases everywhere, left and right, insecurity in the camp. So it was one of those places that, because you have no option, that the only you can make the best out of it. But otherwise, it was not the best condition. However, most of NGOs are trying their best to run the camp with the limited resources that they have.
And you were in your teens
Yes.
when you arrived here in the United States.
Yes.
And a foster family took you in?
Yes. So I was resettled by Lutheran Immigration Refugee Service, and I was received by Bethany Christian Service in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So when I left New York, the only thing that I was not told was the snow, the weather. So when I landed in Michigan,
was that your first time
it was my
seeing
first
snow?
time. Yeah, it was my first time, and it was just amazing. You know, the cold and all of that. But I think what made it different for me was the welcome that was extended to me. It was welcomed by a grateful family, very wonderful family that have really shown me the generosity and the love for the people, the American people. And I think the foundation that they set for me was really what defined me years later, because they opened, not only they opened the house for me, but they opened their heart and resources to help me, to orient me to become part of the system, for me to be able to excel. And part of that was that they were able to teach me language. They were able to, help me to go through the education process to the point that I was able to get my, education. And I had friend, one good friend of mine, Larry, great man. Most of these friends were able to mentor me. They were able to teach me things that I need to know. So it was more of a collective community effort to welcome the lost boys and lost girls in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and be able to pour in to really help them to excel. And not only Michigan, but in most states. And that's how the story got out, the media got into it, the media ran with the story, and the community poured in to help.
And the family that took you in is still a part of your life?
A big part of my life, because when I look, they actually become part of my story. And because they're part of my story, they are my family forever.
And you, in fact, having graduated college and really received a tremendous education, earned a tremendous education, you've devoted your career to giving back. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, someone made me to be here today. And I think in this world we have more good people. And I think we always try to give back as much as we can. And I think that's very much like what you're doing, because your parent brought you here, you excel very well, you become an inspiration to other people like myself to continue to push ourselves. But I think for me, what really inspired me is the people that came to my rescue, that didn't know nothing about me, but they were touched by what I went through, and they know that I have potential, and they just want to unleash those potential. And I think that's what applies to most refugees. When you look at the crisis in Syria and all of that, most of innocent kids and women and elderly are victims. And so today, when I sitting here talking to you, is that any child, when given the right opportunity, when given the right platform, with safety and love and care and nurturing, they can become anybody. And I think the more we do good things, most of us become the ambassadors of this country. I'm a U.S. citizen, and if I go outside today, not do I talk about the goodness of what I experienced, because what I experienced is part of me today. The humility, the care, the love that was extended to me has molded me to become a better person, to become a good ambassador for this country, to continue to take out the goodwill of the American people.
I think, Thornton, just returning to how we began our conversation, one of the things that maybe unites all refugees, regardless of their backgrounds, is an appreciation for how precious an opportunity in life is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think our story has not been told enough. That sometimes we focus more of crisis, but sometimes now it's time for us to tell the story. Like, this is what happened when bring the people in. This is where they start. This is where they're at, and this is what they're doing. they become part of the American society, they become American, they become contributors, doing good thing in armed forces, in the civil service. They're doing all kind of thing alongside their born American counterpart. So these are people that are serving in churches, in the military, in the community. So not only, and that's why that's part of our appreciation. We become equal partners in trying to advance the values of this country and trying to do the good thing to continue to lead the world.
Many years ago, the Lutheran organization facilitated your arrival here in the United States. Years later, you served on the board of that very same agency.
Right.
You now contribute to children
Right.
in need through your work on behalf of the government of the District of Columbia, from darkness to light, and then now, Thorn, you bring light to others. You're a remarkable individual with a remarkable story.
Thank you, Deputy. And I think that applies to most refugees. And today, this is just only the small segment. I know there are other refugees that have done tremendous things, far more than what I did. But I think mine go back to the society and the community here in the U.S. that is the community that transformed me. So I don't take the credit. I say that the American people helped me to become who I am. And now it's collective work that we're trying to inspire more and help more people.
For a better world.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Thorn.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.